Hi folks, this is your NWIS planning outlook with the latest longer range thoughts. We've had a bit of everything so far this month, including some snow on the highest tops in Scotland last weekend. We've now got the quieter side of September with high pressure in charge over these next few days. Benign conditions for many, although a south to southwesterly wind will tend to strengthen with time across more western coastal mountains of Scotland. There'll be a decent amount of sunshine, temperatures will tend to drift upwards day by day. There'll still be some chilly nights with a touch of frost in the valleys and the glens. Sunshine, broken cloud and generally dry conditions to see us out through this week. You can just see by the time we get to Friday that those isobars are a bit closer together, so that wind speed will be strengthening ever further and reaching gale force across the higher mountains in Scotland, particularly further towards the west again, where it could be rather challenging, particularly on Skye, and some powerful gusts developing even further inland around the Cairngorms. The south to southwesterlies will tend to be very gusty over the plateau and towards the north. It's still a dry story by this stage and there'll still be a good deal of sun. Some early low-level cloud banks may just cling to a few slopes, but those will lift and disperse. There will be a frontal system out towards the west which will be making some gradual progress in towards us by the later stages of Friday. High cloud will tend to thicken ahead of that across more western regions in particular. As we head onwards into Friday night through into Saturday, some rain is expected to then move in to more western coastal districts in Scotland and further inland as we head towards dawn. So frustratingly, Saturday is looking a poorer day as this frontal zone makes its way eastwards. It's a relatively weak feature, it's weakening with time, but it could still give some fairly persistent rain, heavier at times across the western mountains in Scotland, and that tending to try and drift eastwards with time through the day. There is still a degree of uncertainty just how far eastwards that gets and how much activity is still left on this front. It has the potential of being a rather poor day in western Scotland, a deteriorating day further eastwards as rain tends to come on, and maybe England and Wales just seeing the rain edging in as well. This model chart keeps it a bit further west, but I'd just watch for that moving in further across the western parts of England and Wales through Saturday daytime. Strongest of the south-southwesterly winds will be on the forward side of that front, becoming confined further eastwards with time, the wind tending to drop from the west as we head further onwards through Saturday daytime. A lot of low cloud will be across the hills, so a less desirable day to be on higher terrain. Murky and damp across a good part of Scotland. Taking things onwards into Sunday, that weakening front is tending to push eastwards. Still some rain on it, I suspect, across England and Wales, becoming increasingly patchy and light with time. And as that clears eastwards across Scotland, there is the scope for some inversion conditions being around for Sunday morning. It just depends on the exact position of that front and how much pressure starts to build, but in a fairly damp atmosphere with rising pressure, there is just a scope to see cloud banks becoming confined to middle and perhaps some lower elevation slopes. Could just allow some high tops in Scotland to at least start the day above the cloud banks. One to watch at this stage, I won't promise that, but keep an eye on the forecasts. Here's how things look on the bigger picture by the time we get to Sunday. We've got an area of high pressure around Scandinavia, another high trying to expand in from the Atlantic, an area of low pressure off the west of Spain and Portugal that will be the remnants of Hurricane Gabrielle, which will have tracked across the Atlantic. That looks to be staying away from us. It's just far enough detached from that weakening frontal zone across us to not interfere too much with our weather story. Most indications keep that system well away. So it is a fairly slack pressure pattern that we'll be greeted with by Sunday, and fairly light winds for most places. That variable array of cloud, some brighter spells coming through, some residual pockets of drizzly rain, but tending to fade out as what's left of that front finally decays away. So early next week we have high pressure back on the scene and some charts that will look quite similar to where we are in the next few days. The high centred just to the east of us, the wind flow typically coming up from a south-southwesterly across Scotland, more of an east to southeasterly across England and Wales. Some bright weather, some sunshine, some variable cloud. Just need to watch how much of that southwesterly influence keeps knocking on the door, though, of west and northwest Scotland. Some weak fronts just grazing through here could just threaten some areas of low cloud and bits of patchy rain just running up the west coast, particularly further northwest. But most places look like having some dry weather again next week, and relatively mild temperatures too, with the air generally having come up from the south. Overnight temperatures not as cool as we've seen just recently. That sort of weather regime seems to be the order of play as we keep going through into the middle of next week. Again, we will just need to see how far in some of these Atlantic systems try and get. Suspect by later in the week, some of those areas of low pressure will start to make inroads further. Southwesterly winds strengthening, perhaps reaching gale force more widely again, and some rain approaching by the end of the week. Averaged out over the week as a whole, the 7 days up until the Monday, the 6th of October, and we see that signal for higher than average pressure, which at least dominates, we think, in the earlier stage of that forecast. The southwesterly making progress with time. As we head forwards, this is the next week of the forecast, and the whole pressure pattern just seesaws a little bit, with the high pushing further back out westwards and lower pressure drifting down towards Scandinavia and northeastern parts of Europe. So that would tip things around to a cooler west by northwesterly flow and bring a changeable mix of some sunshine and showers, maybe some frontal systems just passing through at times. Doesn't look deeply unsettled, doesn't look quite as settled either, so a mixed regime would be expected from that, and temperatures a bit cooler as well, typically compared to the first week or so of October. A reasonable outlook overall. Just Saturday looks an unfortunate spoiler at this time. Keep an eye on your local forecast details for that one. That is your planning outlook for today. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.